our Towards Employment pathway is to work on employment goals and to develop the skills and the confidence that you need. And in doing that, we will be working with communication skills and life skills and social skills around work and what you need to actually feel comfortable in going out and finding employment, and also going onto a job and feeling comfortable there too. So we'd envisage that we'd be working closely with participants, and so we get an understanding of their strengths and their interests and their learning needs. So we're not just throwing out a one-size-fits-all program, but we're throwing something to you that they can grab hold of, and we can assist them in making the most of the skills and the knowledge that we're sending to them. And then we can also work out what those next steps will be. So this might be the start of it. It's definitely not the end. This is something that can help launch your son or your daughter. So what does this process look like? So you would either come in as a SLES funded school leaver, or someone who has individual employment supports. And what we would hope is that you would come into the the Towards Employment skill development phase, and you'd be going 3 days a week of about 6 hours a day for 48 weeks, and that's the funding for the school leavers. That could look different if you're someone who's already been out of school for a while and that you have a particular goal in mind, and you might only need specific skill development. So you might only slot into those 3 days of maybe one day, and we'd be looking at work placements in other ways. But this is how we've set it up to begin with. And we'd be looking at continual, not assessments, but continual reporting and journaling on what your son or daughter is actually doing, and putting that back to their NDIS goals to make sure that they're reaching the goals that they want to reach. And depending on what happens at the end and how that looks and what skills they've developed, we might then establish that they might need to revisit some of those. It might not actually be ready to go into full-time work placements. They might actually need to revisit something like travel training because they actually want to work somewhere that's going to be somewhere outside of where they live currently. They might actually need to develop some more social skills. So as opposed to going back and starting the pathway again, we'd be looking at developing those modules specifically for your son or daughter. And I would envisage that they'd also do some kind of work placement in that time as well to build them up so they can get into that next phase. And that next phase would be longer work placements. So we'd be developing real work-ready skills, so 3 to 6 months of work placements that would be relevant to their interests, so not just any work placement, it would be a matter of their goals. And I've had conversations with people here whose sons are interested in working on farms, working with animals. We've had people who are interested in building, and so we'd be looking at work placements that relate to that and can develop the skills that we know that they need to do that. We'd be looking at, once they finish that, whether that's something that we then realise, are they ready to go into proper open employment or supported employment, and what does that look like for them in the future? And that's where we'd work out whether they're ready for a disability employment service, and we'd move them forward to a DES such as AIM Big, and we'd work with them in that 6-month concurrency period of whether we test the waters to see if something like employment, open employment or supporting employment is right for them, and if that's something that they're ready to do. So we'd move them into that. If that's not something that they're ready to do, we might then have to bring them back and work on their skills again. We might also look at that they may be ready for supported employment, and that might be something that we can provide them through our enterprise area, or we might have to look at another workplace that would be more suited to them. So it's a bit of a circle, and it depends on what your son or daughter is interested in. It depends on what their skill levels are and how they're developing through the program. And then we would hope at the end, and whether that end is in a year to 2 years to 3 years, that we would get them into employment that means something to them and that works for them as well. To give you just an overview of what we have developed in our pathway, this gives you just an overview of the types of modules that we're developing for next year. And you'll see, an orientation is quite important, that we have travel training, exploring job opportunities, the job for me, workplace technology, workplace and everyday maths, team building, small business, healthy relationships, independence, finding a job, working relationships and workplace safety. Very much focused on jobs and work. However, within that, they're learning to develop their communication skills, they're learning to develop life skills and work-ready skills, and also social skills. So you would also see that something like travel training, they might actually be looking at exploring job opportunities, and we would use that with travel training to go out and show them how to find jobs and where you would go to a service such as a DES, and we'd incorporate the two, so it's not just focused on one thing at a time. We'd try and build everything in together so they can build those skills together. This is an example of our first 8 weeks. If you were to come towards employment, and what you would do. What you would find is, though we have spaces here, and this is to show you that one of the focuses that we have is this is a flexible pathway. This is not set in stone, and it depends on what cohort we get and what group we get. If we can work through our orientation in the first 3 days, then we will have that done within the first 3 days. But if we find that people need some more help with this, or we need to work a bit slower, or we need to speed the pace up, then this will be flexible and we'll move around again. You'll also see that we're bringing in people such as Oakley Police and Headspace and external providers to come in and to train our participants in the program. So we're making sure that we're using existing resources as well. And then this is just an example of how we would undertake a workplace visit, but we'd make sure that we'd have travel training incorporated into it. So we're not just focusing on something such as we're going to hop on the train today, we're going to get off at the station, and then we're going to come back. It would actually be a proper destination, and we'd visit a workplace, and then we would come back through that as well. And I think one of the things probably need to focus on is that individual focus. If someone comes in and they're interested in working on a farm, then we'd be looking at areas such as portfolio building and goals and outlines and technology, and how we actually use that in that area that person's interested in. So every kind of activity that they'd be undertaking would be focused on the area that they're interested in. Someone might even come in, and one of the reasons they might be coming towards employment is because they have no idea what they want to do, which is very common when you're leaving school, and very common when you're a young adult. Even when you've actually gone into work, I'm still trying to work out what I want to do. So you do need some guidance, and so that might actually be that they come in and they have absolutely no idea what they're interested in. So our workplace visits to the areas that others are interested in might actually help them and might spark some interest as well. And I guess I can't focus enough on the fact that with the SLES funding, what they do say is that we need to be as innovative as we can, but we also need to provide some individualisation to it. However, we also need to make sure that participants are being socialised, they're working in groups, and they know what it's like to be out there with other people, and that's why we're providing it in a group environment. But we don't want to lose that focus on each of the participants as well and what they need to achieve. Some just important considerations about towards employment is that this is a pilot program for us. This is brand new for us next year, and I guess one of the benefits of that is that we get to learn from people who have already provided the program. We get to learn from partners who can give us feedback on what works and what doesn't. And what you do as parents actually get to have your input and your say as well. I can imagine that we will have a small cohort to start off with, and that small cohort will allow us to focus on each one and the parents' involvement as well to provide feedback on how it runs. And so again, back to the flexibility of it, if things aren't working, we will be able to change it a lot easier than if we had a very, very large group. And so what we would hope is that this would continue to develop throughout the year. In regards to the progress and the outcome, it depends on your goals, and it might mean that we have to revisit some skills for some people. It might mean that we might have to change a few things to suit individuals. We might need to look at whether someone might need one-on-one support and others may not. So it'll just depend on each individual as well. And as a result, we'll have that individual attention. So the difference for us from other options is that there are other SLES providers out there, and there are other employment options out there. What we're providing is the group training. Some provide individual and more of a structured approach. So you know where your son or daughter is each time that they come to us. They will come and check in with us before they go out for the day, or they will always have a trainer with them or a support worker with them. There are other options too as well, and I urge you to explore those for your child, and that could be anywhere from VCAL to Certificate 1 and Certificate 2. The main thing is, at the end of the day, we're not a certified course in the sense that we're not a registered training provider. But what that allows us to do is provide the flexibility and to be responsive to what happens. We don't have a rigid set of instructions, but we do have a guideline of what needs to happen for our participants to have employment outcomes. And that's where we use the expertise of our OCC enterprises as well. When are we offering it? So we're looking at 6 hours a day, 3 days a week. SLES funding allows you 48 weeks a year. We're offering this for 45, and we would envisage that those extra 3 weeks are picked up with planning and orientation as well. We will be offering it Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays next year from 8:45 to 3:15. I know that's not 6 hours. We're allowing for a lunch break as well in between that, so that would cover that too. And we're offering it from next year at Mackie Road Neighbourhood House in Mulgrave, which is just off Springvale Road. It's a fantastic facility, beautiful grounds and gardens, and a great little atmosphere for the community to be involved. And they actually really want us to be involved in this centre, which is really nice, so very, very welcoming. We have this large multi-purpose hall which we can actually section off to suit our class sizes, and it depends on whether we want to do a larger activity or whether we only need a small activity as well. We might also have participants from other areas of our day support in there too, so there might be chances for socialisation with other people too. And we also have a kitchen that we would be able to use at any time. So the facilities are really, really good. The other locations is that we'll be using external venues for travel training. We'll be undertaking workplace visits, work experience and other opportunities that we see necessary throughout the program. So funding. To undertake towards employment, a participant must have in their package the School Leavers Employment Support. And for the School Leavers Employment Support, you usually need to be a Year 12 leaver. However, there are cases where, I think special cases, that if NDIS see that there are no other options and school's not working in other ways, that you might be able to apply for it if you're younger than 18. We also have the individual employment support that's in the NDIS plans, and that allows people who aren't immediate school leavers to get funding to undertake the program. If you don't have this funding in the plan now, that's fine. It's a matter of working out what you want to do and then going back to your plan manager and looking at your plan to have that adjusted. Additional costs would be, we have a few external providers that we will be using, and we will be covering those costs, and that might be someone coming in to undertake some first aid training or something like that. The only thing that we would be asking is that all participants will have a Myki card for their travel training at this stage. The enrolment process looks pretty hefty there, but it's only a few steps, but we've got in each of the packs that you have, we have an expression of interest form, and if you are interested, I urge you to fill that out and either leave it here or you can contact me later and send it through later. We'd also then look at an interview with you and your son or your daughter, and have a look to make sure that you've got the right funding in your plans to do that. If you're successful, we'd meet to create a service agreement, and then we'd look at writing a plan up as well, and then we'd look at if there are any other services that you would like to actually undertake. And that is one thing that we have realised out in the market that there are some people who are very interested in undertaking a 3-day-a-week program for their son or daughter, but they actually need something 2 extra days. And so that's something we can talk to you about too if we've got something that we can offer you there. And then we'd be looking at your orientation and meeting peers and staff in December and starting in January. So that's it for me at the moment. I'll bring you on to Athena.
Just to give you a brief summary on the enterprise part of our organisation. I will be here for the balance of today's session, so I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards or further explain something that you might feel like you need more explanation on. So OC Connections Enterprises is the employment arm of OC Connections. We are based primarily at Centre Road in South Oakley, and we currently provide supported employment to 117 employees. So we offer a variety of services there, some which are done on site, which is our contract packing, but we also have a couple of social enterprises where our teams are actually working in the community, participating as part of the community in a supported environment. So we have a team of our workers who do admin services for the Department of Defence, based in St Kilda Road in the city, and we also have our mobile car wash team who goes to various locations and departmental buildings and local councils and car yards, where we clean fleet vehicles, all in a supported environment, and that's the key point here. So we provide individualised employment opportunities in a supported environment. So what we do is, for each worker that comes to work in our organisation, we look at what is someone's employment goals and how can we support them in learning those goals in that supported environment. So we have an individualised process for every worker to go through and find out what is your dream job, what is your skill set, what are your skill gaps, what is the main thing that you need to get you to that place. So we will have these planning meetings on an annual basis where we look at what is someone's goals and how can we help you get to those goals. So those meetings are quite formal, where we discuss what the goal is and the strategies for achieving those goals. We then have a commitment between ourselves and the employees on how we're going to go forward with that. That is obviously monitored throughout the course of the year, and if someone achieves that goal, great, let's put a new one in. If someone's struggling, let's revisit that goal and see how can we change it to make that person successful in that goal. It is very much also about supporting those individuals who are looking for open employment to be able to transition them to open employment. So sometimes the training that someone needs could be on employability skills, soft skills. How do we communicate to people we don't know? How do we complain about something that might be a problem? The things that people often, me included sometimes, feel uncomfortable doing. So, actually I don't feel uncomfortable doing it. That's a bit of a lie, sorry. But it's still something that we would help someone learn. So everyone's employment plans are different. So we have people who want to learn one step in a job as part of their goals, and we have people whose goals are help me go for interviews. So the variety of those goals, the goals are endless and are supported through a formal process with the training officer and then transition to our supervisors. And then we will put in place systems to support the pathway for those employment goals. And that's where we would utilise the service of a DES or a partnership with the DES to help make that happen and transition that person out. We can offer also leave from work to do work experience elsewhere. So we've had a number of people do work experiences with local councils, and then they still come back to us to experience that working life, but still be supported by us to do it. So our main focus is that individualised support for that individual to meet their employment goals, and it's sometimes just about asking the question, what do you want to do? And it is that same question that Fleur mentioned before, but it's such a strong question, and when we open those doors to those questions, we get amazing outcomes for our guys. So it is about just finding out what someone wants to achieve and how can we play a part in being a part of that process. That is a real brief summary on what we do.
So what we're aiming to do, I suppose, is mix that up. And what can we do differently as a DES? There's very much a perception out there at the moment that DES providers just put squares into circle holes, or that if you bring your child along to a DES service, they will instantly have a job in Coles. We need to think bigger than that, and what I've loved hearing tonight is just around that discovery piece. That's something that keeps me going each and every day, is about talking to our clients about what they want to do and why. What are those main motivators? Why are we looking at jobs that participants are simply capable of doing, not what they actually want to do? So that's the angle that we're sort of attacking DES at. One of the things that we've brought up is one of our many programs that we're running within the DES umbrella called BusyBean. So what we've done is started a program nationally, which has been around engaging people out of SLES providers and ADEs to help them take that transition into mainstream employment. So typically, everything we've touched on tonight, it's the same interactions, it's the same skill building, it's even down to cash handling experiences, everything like that, that social interaction, all of that is coming out of the similar program as well. Our referral process is very simple. They are under a part of the DES umbrella, so that means they will be commenced in the DES, but what we do is we encourage people to apply online, come into one of our cafes, we'll go through the locations in a tick, and actively give it a go for a couple of hours, even over a couple of weeks that can happen, and just to see how things are settling in, how they're finding it, because once again, it's got to be the fundamental motivator that this is actually something that the participant wants to pursue. Currently, we are rolling out in more locations than you can poke a stick at, but obviously the two applicable to here are Moonee Ponds and Frankston. And what we're actually finding is that a lot of the referral partners that we're getting referring participants in are coming back to us and saying, I love this, let's start a cafe here, actually in our organisation. For example, we've just started with BAM Dance School in Frankston, who are a dance school catered towards people with an intellectual disability, and a lot of those participants are coming along to their regular lessons. After that, they're helping, they're making coffee, they're getting paid while they're doing that. It's a proper full-time, full wage, and they're developing those skill sets and then moving on from that point as well. Bit of a case study for you, and I suppose the bloke for us who kicked it all off, Harley, he was in our Sydney office, head office, and Harley's case really came from the level of discovery that we're doing. One thing that really sort of moved me around meeting Harley was no one in his experience at DES had actually really sat down and said, mate, what do you want to do? And his answer to that was, I would like to make coffee. So from there, we went out and we purchased a little coffee machine in the office, and we said, all right, if you can make coffee for us, you can make coffee for anybody. And he just excelled time and time again. He started very quietly, he struggled taking orders, but after a couple of weeks, the interaction was the exact same as any other colleague that we've got in our head office in Sydney. And from that, really, I suppose, kicked off the program, I guess. So, as I've touched on, BusyBeans is a stepping stone program. Where we're finding the most success is talking to the corporate relationships that we've already got on the go, and once again having that on-site barista training. For the employer, there's a number of benefits. They keep people at their desk longer, let's face it, that's what they're aiming to do. But also, it's a good way for them to also involve the broader community into their organisation. And we step them into these roles. So with us in Melbourne, we've touched on majority of these, Google, NAB, Compass, Alfie, Southern Cross Media as well. The Melbourne Museum is up and running, and that support from us doesn't stop once they transition into that employment. Cool. That's pretty much it as a nutshell. I can appreciate that I've sped through it, but it is a little bit to cover. So I suppose the key takeaways around, it's 8 hours of work a week, it is a full-time wage of $25 an hour, and it's more around, I suppose, developing that skill set to be a good quality barista. All of our baristas, I'm proud to say, can make a cup of coffee that rivals what you'll get in Collins Street in the city. And even down to the beans that we're using, we're even exploring picking our own blend from South America. Our cafe in Moonee Ponds is a fully fledged functioning cafe. It's open to the public, and they're getting that real world life experience out of that cafe. As a result, we've got about 110 BusyBean participants nationally, and we've moved on 60 of them into that next step of employment, and from that, the majority of them are still employed in that and still receiving our support as well. So for us, it's a unique program that no other DES provider is actually offering, and it's probably just one of 3 or 4 programs that we do offer as a DES provider. And your general eligibility for that is 16 years of age. Once again, similar to the SLES side of things, there are exceptions that if you're not in your last year of school, we can take you on board. So happy to have those discussions. Me and Courts will be around for the rest of the night, so if you've got any questions, feel free.